Chapter 6, A Garden for Eternity. I set off on a day trip to the country along with the employees of the Anastasia Cultural Foundation of Vladimir. Footnote, in this case, the name of one of Russia's oldest cities, founded in 1108 by Prince Vladimir Monomakh on the site of a much earlier settlement, which once served as the Russian capital. We stopped by the picturesque shore of a small pond. The women went about preparing a variety of salads for lunch, while the men attended to building a fire. I stood at the edge of the pond, gazing at the water, and lost myself in thought. I was in a pretty gloomy mood. All at once, Veronica, a resident of a nearby village, came up to me and said, "Vladimir Nikolaevich, just about 7 kilometers from here, in the middle of these fields, there are 2 former manorial states. There's nothing left of the buildings, but the fruit orchards have been preserved. Nobody looks after them, but they still bring forth fruit year after year. They give a lot more fruit than the village orchards, which are tended to and fertilized. In 1976, there was an extremely cold winter in these parts, and a lot of people lost their orchards and were forced to plant new ones. But these 2, out among the fields, weren't touched by the cold at all. Not a single tree was lost." "Why didn't the cold touch them?" I asked. "Maybe they were a special variety, cold resistant?" "No, just the usual variety. But the way everything was set up on these former estates, the way they did it on just a single hectare of land, wow. It's pretty much the way Anastasia describes it in your books. 200 years ago, people planted Siberian cedars all along it with local oak trees. Another thing, the hay from the grass that grows there is a lot richer. It keeps for a long time. If you'd like, we could go see the place right now. It's just a dirt trail through the fields, but your Jeep can make it." I couldn't believe my ears. Who? How? A gift like this? Just at the right place and the right time? Are such coincidences really coincidental after all? "Let's go," I said. The trail ran across fields belonging to a former state farm. Footnote, state farm, in the Soviet period, a farm where workers were paid a monthly wage as in a factory. I saw fields, though they were really more like hayfields or meadows, all overgrown with tall grasses. They've really cut back their growing areas here, observed Evgeny, Veronica's husband. "The farm company doesn't have enough money for fertilizer. Anyway, the ground's getting a rest. It's not just the ground. The birds have started singing again this year. You didn't hear such a happy twitter before. What are they so happy about? Maybe because there are no chemicals on the fields now." Before the revolution, there were villages here in these meadows. My grandmother told me about them, but there's no trace left of them now. Look, there it is, to the right of the trail, the former estate. In the distance, I could see tall trees growing densely together. They appeared to cover about a hectare of ground. This place seemed simply like a green aisle of forest, all surrounded by fields and meadows. As we drew closer, I could see in among the dense grove of 200-year-old oak trees and bushes an entrance leading to a woodland oasis inside. We went in through the entrance and there we were inside. Just imagine. There inside were ancient apple trees with gnarled trunks, spreading their branches out into space. Branches literally dripping with fruit. They hadn't been dug around. They were just growing there amidst the grasses. They hadn't been sprayed for insects. But these old apple trees were bearing fruit, and their fruit showed no sign of worm infestation. Some of the trees were real oldies. Their branches were breaking under the weight of the fruit. Real oldies. Quite possibly this was their last year of bearing fruit. They will soon die off, but Alongside each ancient tree, you could already see shoots of a new tree breaking through the soil. The thought actually came to me that these trees probably wouldn't die, at least not until they saw the fresh and healthy shoots coming from their seed. I walked through the orchard, took a taste of their fruit, wandered among the oak trees growing all around, and it seemed as though I could discern the actual thoughts of the man who had created this splendid oasis. It was as though I could hear him thinking, right here around the orchard, I should put in an oak grove that will protect the orchard from the winter cold, as well as the summer heat and dry years. Birds will make their nests in the tall trees and stop the caterpillars from taking over. I'll plant a shady oak alley by the shore of the pond. When the trees grow up, their tops will come together, giving shade to the spacious alley below. And all at once a kind of vague thought made my blood course faster through my veins. What was it demanding of me, this thought? And then it came in a flash. Of course, Anastasia. Naturally, you were right when you said that we could feel God in coming into contact with his creations and in continuing his creations. Not by wild antics, jumping up and down in newfangled rituals, but by directly turning to him, to his thoughts. It is surely possible to understand his wishes and our own purpose in life. Here I am standing beneath the oak trees on the shore of a man-made pond, and I can literally read the thoughts of the man behind this living creation. And he, this man, this Russian, who lived here 200 years ago, no doubt felt more than others the thoughts of the Creator, which enabled him to bring about this paradise creation, his own garden, his own family nest. He may have died, this Russian, but his orchard has remained, and it is still bringing forth fruit and feeding the children of the neighboring villages who come here every autumn to delight in the fruits. Some people gather them up and sell them. And you, my fine Russian fellow, no doubt you wanted your grandchildren and great-grandchildren to live here. Of course you did. I can tell that because you didn't just put up a mansion with a limited lifespan, but something that will last for eternity. But where are your grandchildren and great-grandchildren today? Your family domain has been abandoned. It's all grown over with grasses, and your pond is drying up. But your allier, for some reason, did not grow over with wild grass. In fact, the grass beneath is like a carpet. Your corner of paradise, which you created, your family domain, is no doubt still awaiting the return of your descendants. Decades go by, even centuries, but it is still waiting. So where are they? Who are they now? Whom do they serve? Whom do they worship? Who chased them away from here? We did have a revolution. Maybe that's to blame for everything? Of course it is. Only a revolution is made by people when some sort of qualitative change takes place in the consciousness of the majority. What happened in the minds of your contemporaries, my fine fellow Russian? That your family domain has gone to waste. The local old-timers told me how the aging Russian landowner headed off a bloodbath on his domain when a group of revolutionary-inclined residents from 2 nearby villages, pumped up on local beer, marched en masse to pillage his family domain. The landowner came out to meet them with a basket of apples, only to be slain by a bullet from a double-barrel gun. He had known already the night before that they were planning to pillage his house, and he had persuaded his grandson, a Russian officer, to leave the domain. The grandson, a front-line veteran, decorated with a St. George's Cross, fled together with his comrades in arms, with front-line Mosin rifles slung over their shoulders. Their open wagon also carried trusty battle-worn machine gun. Footnote, Mosin rifle, the standard Army issue 3-line rifle in both the Imperial and Soviet Russian armies, developed in 1891 by Sergei Ivanovich Mosin, 1849 to 1902. He probably went into immigration and now has grandchildren of his own growing up. Your descendants, my fine fellow Russian, are growing up in another land, while in Russia, in your kin's domain, the leaves of the trees in your orchard are rustling in the breeze, and every year your old apple trees are bringing forth fruit, astounding all the residents around with a luxuriant harvest. There isn't a trace of your house left. All the outbuildings have been torn down, but the orchard lives on in spite of everything, no doubt in the hope that your descendants will return to taste the best apples in the whole wide world. Yet your descendants still are not coming. Why have things turned out like this? And who is making us seek our own happiness at the expense of others just like us? Who is making us breathe air filled with noxious gases and dust instead of floral pollen and beneficial ethers? Who is making us drink water deadened by gases? Who? Who are we today? Why don't your descendants come back, my fine Russian fellow, back to their family nest? In the second domain, the apples were even tastier than in the first. Around this orchard had been planted beautiful Siberian cedars. Local residents informed me that there had been even more cedars earlier. Now only 23 of them were left. During the days following the revolution, when they still had a day labor system, they said people were paid for their work with cedar nuts. Now the nuts were there to be collected by anyone who wanted to. The only thing was, sometimes they would beat the trees very hard with logs to make the cones fall to the ground. Footnote: the customary process of harvesting cedar nuts involves 5 to 10 strong men putting a log on their shoulders and, with a running approach, hitting the trunk of the cedar with one end of the log. This is the most efficient method of knocking off the cones to the ground, yet the most damaging to the tree. A milder alternative is to hit the trunk with a special bat, while the best option, recommended by Anastasia in Book 2, Chapter 31, is to gather the ripe cones that fall to the ground naturally, or climb the tree and pick them by hand. End footnote. 23 Siberian cedars, planted by the hand of a man 200 years ago, still stood there all in a row, like soldiers protecting this splendid orchard from freezing winds and harmful pests. There had been more of them, but one by one they perished, since in Siberia the cedars were always surrounded by tall pines. A single cedar by itself could not withstand the blasts of wind, as its root system is not all that extensive. Cedars are nourished not only through their roots, but also absorb the surrounding space through their tops. That is why the pines, or young cedars, protect them. Whereas here the cedars were all standing in a row. They lasted the first 150 years, but then, after their tops expanded, they began falling, one after the other. For the past 50 years, nobody thought of planting pines or birches beside them, and so the cedars were left to defend the orchard, standing up against the angry winds all on their own. It was probably just last year that one of them began falling, but came to rest against the top of the one next to it in the row. I looked at the sharply leaning tree trunk, whose top was intertwined with that of its neighbor. Their branches had grown together, and the falling tree was still living. Both trees were green and bearing seed. There were only 23 left. They are still standing there, supporting each other, bearing seeds and protecting the orchard. Oh, you Siberiaks. Hang in there just a little longer, please. I'm going to write about you. Oh, Anastasia, you taught me to write books, but why didn't you teach me to write words that would be understandable to a lot of people right off the bat? To a whole lot of people? Why can't I manage to write in an understandable way for a great many people? Why does my thought get so confused? Why do the cedars fall? And why do people only look at them and do nothing? Not far from these former domains, which have preserved right up to our day their splendid orchards in shady alleys, are located several villages. The sight of these villages spoils the whole surrounding landscape. If you look at them from afar, you get the impression that some sort of worm ran amok, laid everything to waste, and dug up the flower-covered meadows. Slums full of gray village houses, farm buildings thrown together out of various rotting materials, dirt from roads broken down under the wheels of lorries and tractors, all contribute to this impression. I asked the local residents whether they had been to the orchards laid out among the cedar and oak trees. Many had been there and tasted the apples. Young people were accustomed to going to the place for picnics. "It's lovely there," was chorused by the young and old alike. But when I asked why nobody had tried to set up their own homestead in the same image and likeness, I got pretty much the same answer each time. We don't have the kind of money the landowners who created this beautiful land had. Our older residents said that the cedar saplings had been brought here by the landowner directly from Siberia. When I asked how much it cost to take the cedar nut from one of these trees and plant it in the ground, I got a strained silence in reply. Which brings me to the thought that it is not lack of opportunity or financial means, but our own inner coding that is somehow to blame for all of our woes. Nowadays, people with money are putting up a lot of fancy houses in the country. The land around these houses has either been dug up or buried in asphalt. In 20 or 30 years, these houses are going to be in need of repair. They won't look like new anymore. And their children won't need this old derelict. They won't be needing a family domain, a motherland, like that. So they'll go off and find themselves a new one. But they'll be taking with them this same mysterious coding they got from their parents and repeating their life as temporary caretakers on the land instead of creating something for eternity. Who will be able to remove it, and how? This mysterious coding for hopelessness. Perhaps what Anastasia has said and shown about the future of Russia will somehow help in this regard. And just to allay the doubts of the skeptics, I have put on the inside cover of these books photographs of these amazing Russian orchards, spreading out their fruit-laden branches to the Russia of the future.